So we know how to make piping. Let's see how to apply it. First thing you're going to do is make sure all of those bones are out of your way. You don't want to stitch over a bone, trust me. You're also going to work from the right side. You can see your basting line that you put in way back when. I've marked my basting lines in another color so you can see them. And you're going to follow those basting lines. Those are your finished edge. Now you're going to have to practice this. This is an advanced sewing skill because you cannot pin or baste the piping on. It doesn't work, especially if you're dealing with a lot of curves. You have to look at where your basting line is and sit your piping stitch line right on top. Manipulate the corset, manipulate the piping, and sew. So there's a lot of things to think about. You're going to use a regular size stitch because this is finishing your edge, so you want to make sure it's nice and secure, and you really only need to stitch over it once. So let's get started. We're going to follow that original basting line. I'm holding the piping so that I can see the stitch line, and I'm not going to catch the cord. And I'm keeping my zipper foot as close as possible. And now I'm going to also manipulate the corset so I can get it out of the way. I'm coming up on a seam. I'm going to make sure everything is flat underneath there and out of the way and nothing's going to tuck. Checking where that basting line is. And there I go. Hopefully you can see that. Now when you come up to curves, this one's quite radical because it's a strap, you really have to pay attention to where that machine line is. You can check, look underneath, yeah, I'm happy with that. And you have to hold the bias flat so you don't stitch over the cord and you don't tuck the bias. So it's a bit squishy in there. And that's where having the knee pedal is a big help too, because then you can sort of lift it a bit as you go and make sure that you're coming in tight against the basting. Now there's a couple of ways to finish your back turn under. Some people like to just fold the back turn first. This one's been turned, and then you pipe right across it. This one's just piped right across the folded back, so you can see that, which is nice and tidy, and it's not very thick. I'm going to do the opposite. I'm going to leave that open. Make sure those bones are out of my way. And I'm going to go straight across the flat turn back. Now the advantage of doing that is if I haven't had a fitting yet, there's the piping taken right across the back. There's the turn back. Okay. The advantage of doing that is if I haven't been in a fitting yet and I want to check it out, I could still let that back out a little bit because I've taken the piping right across. And I always leave a little bit on the end for the gremlins anyway. Now you can use the piping to ease up the garment if you need to. You just grab the end of the piping and give it a tug. Okay. This is useful if things need to come in closer at the armhole. Let's see if you can see that easing up a bit. Not really, but you get the gist. So maybe over the bosom, maybe at the armhole. It just sucks it in a little more to the body, and you may find there's an occasion to do that with your Victorian corset. So that's a handy thing. Once you've decided where you're going to ease it in, you ease it and then throw a little hand stitch in behind to keep the cord from moving around. So that is sewing piping onto the corset. And I will show you next how to grade and finish that piping. So this is how you stitch a lace into a corset so it stays there and doesn't get lost between the wardrobe and the backstage. What I've done is I've threaded one end through the top eyelet here. Depends how you want to lace stuff up as to where you put it, but I'm putting mine in the top. So I'm going to cut off the little aiguillette here so it doesn't poke into anybody. And now on the wrong side, I'm going to take that end and tuck it under. And I like to make stuff sort of match up with other stuff, so I'm matching it to the edge of the turn back on my corset. I'm going to use double regular thread because that's a bit tidier. Coban, you could use Coban, but it's kind of honker for the job. So I'm going to bury my thread like I usually do underneath so you can't see it. And I'm using this color so you can see what I'm up to. You of course will use the color of the lace. You don't want to poke all the way through. You're doing it on the center back turn back, so you should be able just to catch the fabric of the turn back. And I'm going to do a whip stitch around to hold this in place. And I'm just catching the turn back. So I'll come down, make sure you can see what I'm up to. Kind of hard to manipulate with the bones in the back there. Okay, and I'm tucking that end under so you can't see it. And catching that lace. Make sure you can see what I'm up to. Now when you get close to the eyelet, I'm just going to check here to see I haven't poked all the way through. So when you get near the eyelet, what you're going to do is do a little back stitch across there, and that holds it across the lace. And again, I'm just catching the actual cotillion on the back. Let's rethread this puppy. No, it doesn't want to do it. There we go. And I'm just making nice little back stitch there. And then I finish whip stitching around. Now this has to be secure because people are going to be tugging on it and pulling on it and tying it. Let's see if you can see that. So make sure that it's nice and secure. Now, some folks, once they've done that, will come across at a diagonal and again do another back stitch across there just to make it super extra secure. So you can see I'm just heading diagonally across there, and where I started my back stitches to go across, that's where I'm going to finish up. And then I'll anchor my stitches 3 or 4 times. Oop, likes to catch around the corners. So that's your lace finished off there. Nice and strong, you can really pull on that puppy. Okay, so that's stitching in the corset lace.